Hello there friends and welcome. For today's Warhammer Rogue Trader guide we have a Pasqal the Tech Priest build. And we'll be going as a Plasma Lord, so that your Pasqal will not only excel at what he already does best, that is, buffing allies and debuffing enemies with many of his exclusive Tech Priest abilities, but most importantly, melt enemies by unleashing an onslaught of plasma hits, around 11 attacks when truly buffed per turn, due to his unique ability that lets him restore action points whenever attacking with plasma weapons, as to easily explode all enemies even as area of effect for great amounts of damage, and all you see here is on unfair just at the second chapter of course. So this build will help you on all difficulty modes. Lastly, your Pasqal will be quite competent skills wise as well for most of the important skills in the game, especially tech use, logic, and even some of the lore ones and Medicae. So without further ado, let us get into our Pasqal Plasma Lord build. Pasqal the Tech Priest comes as an operative, which is great for both buffing, debuffing, and also increasing his own damage. He'll always generate exploits on all enemies in battle, which of course increases the damage you deal against them. And you can always proc more through the Analyze Enemies ability, while using Expose Weakness to reduce their dodge, parry, and armor by a nice amount. He already starts with the passive learning talent, which can increase the number of exploits enemies around him start with. It's a pretty big range, around 10 cell radius, and you'll keep granting them more exploits on subsequent turns, but with a much smaller range. For level 5 we absolutely want to increase his intelligence, as it is his most important stat for all the skills that matter for him, especially tech use and logic. Even some of the lore skills you want, and also the dialogue skills, as I'll give you a way of increasing them later, plus some of his important operative abilities that increase the damage of all allies, for example, all based on intelligence. For our first generic talent, I recommend you pick Advanced Skill Tech Use for a nice plus 13 bonus to it. The main reason I'm picking this is because I do play on Unfair, where you get a minus 20% penalty to all skills, so this can help with that. The secondary benefit of rerolling failed skill checks will also help a lot, but it is unfortunately bugged at the moment. You do get a reroll, but with 0% chance only, so it's not working. Even if you aren't on Unfair, tech use skill checks are plentiful, and there are some very high difficulty ones. For level 6 and our first special operative talent, just like Cassia, Pasqal does have his own unique Tech Priest talents, which are at the bottom here, starting with Acceleration Protocols. Sadly, unlike Cassia, who can also pick them during the levels you get generic talents, Pasqal can only pick them in the operative level talents, so you kinda have to choose between one or the other. My personal preference is Uncanny Sight, which lets him automatically apply exploits at the start of battle, even if the enemies aren't in his line of sight, so essentially all enemies every single turn. And the more enemies with exploits, the better for all of his most powerful abilities. Then keep increasing intelligence until you cap out. For level 7 and his first special operative power, Joint Analysis is the way to go. With this, Pasqal will buff all allies to deal additional damage equal to his intelligence modifier, even at the very start is around plus 5 extra damage, and also lets them remove exploits. For his first skill increase, tech use is the way to go. As I said, there are many skill checks based on this. For level 8, you can pick one operative special talent, Weak Body and Weak Soul, which reduces the enemy's toughness and willpower by a nice amount whenever Pasqal uses his Expose Weakness ability. It's just that I often go with Cassia, and she has much better ways of reducing the enemy's toughness and willpower through the Waking Nightmare ability. And because we have a lot of special Tech Priest talents to pick, I'd rather start into them right now. First with Filtering Protocols, one of the best of them all. With this, whenever Pasqal attacks with plasma or metal weapons, he'll automatically gain 1 AP. Because the normal shot, especially for plasma weapons, only costs 1 AP, well, it's essentially free. However, you are still limited by the fact you can only perform 1 attack per turn. But, through the aid of the Officer's Finest Hour talent, you have unlimited attacks per turn. So you'll get to attack essentially a massive amount of times, around 11 sadly, because that is the attack limitation to finest hour as far as I've tested. You don't have infinite attacks, unfortunately. But hey, 11 per turn is pretty good because your officers can just cast this on Pasqal another time, all in the same round. Even without that, however, as I said, it is still a free attack you can perform on every single turn. Great because Pasqal has a lot of buffs and debuffs you want to use on the enemies, and they all cost AP. For a generic talent, you can actually go with Calculated Relations, which lets all of your main dialogue skills scale based on intelligence, his main stat, which is why we get such nice bonuses to the side here, but I already have other party members for that, like Cassia, my main character, and so on. I'd rather pick Pinnacle of Weaponry to increase our plasma damage even further. The first attack will deal additional damage equal to his intelligence modifier, while further attacks will deal that divided by 2. Sadly, I do think this is bugged at the moment, at least for the secondary attacks. They appear capped at just +1 damage bonus. But hey, the more damage the better. For his heroic action upgrade, it doesn't really matter because you'll never want to use this. Rather, just go for the officer's finest hour. Especially because of Pasqal's filtering protocols, of course. It's 11 attacks instead of just a single one you'd get from this. Anyways, you might as well go with Dismantling Attack to cripple the enemy's weapon and ballistic skill. After you max stack use out, go with Logic instead, also based on intelligence. And chances are no one else in your party will be focused in this. For level 10, Logic once again, and as we capped intelligence out from Operative, I recommend you go with ballistic skills. As I said, this Pasqal can be quite powerful for damage dealing with, let's say, plasma weapons. The higher your ballistic skills, the higher your chances of hitting the enemies with them and also getting critical hits. But of course, for a melee focused Pasqal, you'd rather go with weapon skill. And for the next level, we want another Tech Priest talent, Aiming Protocols, which grants Pasqal a very nice bonus to his ballistic skill, and also dodge reduction, once again equal to intelligence for plasma and melt attacks. Once you max tech use and logic, well, I'd rather go with Lore Xenos because no one else in my party can do this, but you can also go with Medicae. Lore Xenos can help when it comes to disarming a few traps that only work based on this, not the normal demolition skills, usually when fighting the alien enemies. For level 12, Tactical Knowledge is the way to go. This is one of the best buffs in the game. It hits a huge area, you can freely select the location, and you'll get double benefits. First, 2 times the number of removed exploits percentage armor bonus for all allies. Second, if 4 or more exploits are removed, Pasqal will also get the removed amount as a flat bonus to damage until the end of combat, right, for both of these benefits. It's really good. Ideally, you always want to hit at least 4 enemies with this so you get both the benefits, especially considering how many times Pasqal can attack per turn when buffed with Officer. Do note that the bonus to armor will stack with more uses. The bonus to damage will remain the same, however, but you can still use it every round for more defenses. For a generic talent, this is when I like to pick It Will Not Die, as you are close to fighting the first story boss, which can be pretty difficult, and you do have around 50 levels to benefit from the effect. And for another talent, well, Overcharge Protocols would be an amazing choice as a specific Tech Priest talent, as it can highly increase Pasqal's damage, equal to 2 times his intelligence bonus percentage, stacking whenever he shoots with plasma or metal weapons. If he doesn't shoot for 1 round, he'll lose the benefit, but it doesn't matter because he always has a free attack. Through, of course, filtering protocols. Unfortunately, I do think this talent is bugged at the moment and not working at all, which is why I'm not picking it, but be sure to keep it in mind for future patches and so on. Sad because we do lose quite a lot of extra potential damage. So I'd rather pick Tide of Excellence. With this, whenever Pasqal triggers an exploit, he'll get both a +1 bonus to damage and +2% to armor penetration, which stacks with itself. Because of how many attacks you can make under filtering protocols with Finest Hour, well, eventually this bonus can add up to quite enormous amounts. Then more ballistic skills. After you max both intelligence and ballistic, go for perception because at the very least it reduces the enemy's dodge for plasma weapons, any ranged attack really. And for the last generic talent as operative, you might as well go with Plasma Weapon Expert for higher maximum damage. This way we truly have as many bonuses to Plasma as we can. For the final upgrade to Dismantling Attack, well, you might as well go with the one that prevents enemies from moving. But as I said, you'll never be using this. And that's it for Operative Progression. Now, for Pasqal's second archetype, I really enjoy him as a Grand Strategist, because it can increase his buffing and debuffing potential even further. And the other party member I have as this, Cassia, well, she doesn't have the space to get the unique Grand Strategist talents. Anyways, another amazing benefit is the fact you will always act first before all enemies by virtue of just being a level 1 Grand Strategist. And Pasqal, as I said, can buff allies and debuff enemies, which is why I really enjoy him going first. For level 17 we get our first Grand Strategist ability. There's a lot of great choices here, but this is going to depend on whether you want more damage or more defenses. Later you can get most of them anyways. Combat Locus is the best for more damage because it doubles the bonuses of whatever area you choose. And ideally you want to drop this on the rear area for more ranged damage. Kill Zone on the other hand is amazing for the frontline area which you want to drop on the enemies, so that they have to reroll, dodge and parry attempts. And even get instantly killed, so long as they are left with a low amount of hit points. The faster you kill the enemies the better, of course. While Stronghold Stratagem will provide all allies buffed with a very nice amount of armor percentage, which stacks with all other bonuses like from Tactical Knowledge, immunity to prone, and even a nice amount of deflection against area attacks like enemy burst weapons. Even immunity to injuries. It's really good. Anyways, I like going all out on offenses, so I'd rather Combat Locus first. For level 18 and our Grand Strategist talent, my preferred pick is Diversion Zone. This is quite amazing for extra defenses because whenever you use a stratagem on a rear area, and of course we want Combat Locus, it will also make all allies inside the lowest priority targets for enemies, which means they will simply not attack the allies inside 99% of the time. I don't think I need to explain how powerful this is because you can fully protect your allies. It always works, doesn't require a saving throw unlike some warrior abilities, for example, like Taunt. And well, by just keeping a melee character like Abelard as a tank away from this area, you ensure the enemies focus on him first so that he can do his job as a tank. The next level is just the Grand Strategist Heroic Action. You'll never be using it because, like I said, it's all about Officer's Finest Hour. For level 20 we get +1 AP, like with any other build, and resume progression into Intelligence. For level 21, go with Improvised Strategy. It's really quite an efficient talent, as at the start of combat, your Pasqal will get the ability to cast one of the stratagems he does not have, so at this point everything besides Combat Locus, for free with 0 AP cost, even without knowing the ability of course. Yes, it is random, but a lot of the ones here are great, so it helps to have one for free every combat. And more intelligence of course. For the next level and stratagem, I really like Stronghold, because when you cast it on rear, as I said, it's a lot of nice defensive bonuses to allies, so that even if they are hit under Diversion Zone, which chances are won't happen, they'll be extra tanky. But you can also go for a Kill Zone on frontline area. Then resume progression into Tech Use, of course, his most important skill. And I'd go for a Sniping Zone. This will buff all allies in the rear area, the most important of them all, with a nice enough bonus to critical chance. While characters like Argenta, with my build for her, can already achieve 100% criticals easily, that's not true for Pasqal, so he can benefit from the bonus to, well, critical enemies with plasma weapons. Then resume progression into ballistic skills, of course. For another generic talent, Persistence of the Forge is something you can use, but Pasqal has good enough chances of hitting enemies when buffed to an officer ally. Grenadier is also a choice even earlier if you want. I'd rather go with an increase to his intelligence, however, as it is his most important stat. For level 25 and another talent, Strategic Offensive. All enemies killed in the frontline area will increase your combat tactics benefits by +1. That is, your areas, of course. Then resume progression into Ballistics skill. More tech use now. The first upgrade to take hold can be whatever. Might as well pick the dodge, parry and armor increase. and we are kinda running out of great Grand Strategist talents. I'd go with Blurred Locus now. And back to Perception. More Perception, and more Tech Use. For level 30, go with Killzone Stratagem, but you can of course switch the order based on the ones you prefer. And for the next talent, Personal Zone. The benefits aren't that high because it's the bonus divided by 2, but hey, the more perception and agility for allies the better. For more generic talents, well, I'd increase Pasqal's Logic now, but you can also go for, let's say, more perception to reduce the enemy's dodge. Then resume progression into Logic. More perception. After you max the 3 most important stats, honestly, you can kinda go with anything here. Weapon skill at least can help you with melee, if you want. And for the last Grand Strategist talent, might as well go with Point of Interest. And anything for a generic talent. For me, Advanced Skill Logic. And the last upgrade to Take and Hold, which also doesn't matter. And that's it for Pasqal as a Grand Strategist. Now let's cover his build as Exemplar until level 40, but you do have 55 max levels, just that at this point you are more than enough overpowered as it is. I'd focus into the damage boosting ones, just like with my Argenta build, because like I said, Pasqal can attack a lot, starting with Extermination so that, well, he gets a +1 to damage for every attack. He has 11 per finest hour, so just do the math, right? Then Improve Tactics for more damage through Tactical Knowledge as a talent. Notice that you can also pick this way earlier, during Operative Progression. It's just that depending on your party, well, there won't be that many enemies left by the time Pasqal gets to attack. Then more Tech Use, of course, and let's say Machine Spirit Scan Protocols for the next talent. It's just that I often prefer to buff my allies with this instead of hitting the enemies, but we have the space for it now. More Intelligence, of course, and Base Skill Lore Xenos, or let's say more Perception. Ballistic Skill also works. Might as well go with Perfect Spot for the operative ability, it's just that my characters are often not in cover. More Tech Use, of course, so you'll never fail. And for another Exemplar talent, Cataclysm, for more damage the more damage you deal. And I'll just pick Overcharge Protocols here to remind you that it is an amazing talent when it is finally fixed, that is. That's it for our level 40 progression. Now let's just do a quick section on how to play your Pasqal, as this is often requested from the builds. So first, always activate Tactical Knowledge and try to hit as many enemies as you can, of course. If the enemies are spread out, well, you'll want to always hit at the very least 4 to proc both the armor and the damage bonus to Pasqal, so let's do that. Then go for Analyze enemies on the toughest target, in this case, the Tarsus Tech Priest boss here. Expose Weakness can be used, but since I have Cassia, which can already provide the same but better, I don't really bother with it at all. After that, it's time to drop your combat areas, they only cost 0 AP after all. Always start with Rear, to buff your main ranged allies, including Cassia and Argenta. Sadly, you can't really rotate the area, so you kinda have to select the one that hits most characters you want. Pasqal can always move to whatever zone you create anyways. So let's create Rear and move here. Don't forget that because of the Diversion Zone talent, allies inside Rear Zone will always be the enemy's lowest priority targets. So try to keep, let's say, your tank, like Abelard, away from it so enemies focus on him instead, by having him start, well, not so close to your characters, of course. Then drop your front line on top of, well, the most dangerous enemies or the most numerous ones. Now it's time to buff your combat zones, but since we only have 2 AP left, you can also go for Machine Spirit Communion, his unique ability. I often don't bother using it besides the early levels, because the benefits, well, they can be good, especially for burst weapon characters like Argenta, as you reduce the recoil of weapons. But as far as the penalty to enemy dodge, my characters are buffed enough not to care for it. This does last for a very long time, however, so it's only on the first turn that you'll have to spend 2 AP. Anyways, when you have at least 2 AP remaining, it helps to attack with Pasqal depending on what you want. Because of his Filtering Protocols talent, he will always regain 1 AP when attacking with Plasma. So the normal plasma shot will cost 0, but you need at least 1 AP remaining, while plasma overcharge only 1 point, but you need 2 remaining. So let's do that, ideally on, well, the area with most enemies. So let's do our plasma overcharge on these enemies here. And there we go, we only spent 1 AP. With the remaining AP, you can go for one of the stratagem bonuses, such as Combat Locus or Stronghold Stratagem. I have Combat Locus for 0 cost because of the Improvised Strategy talent. Don't forget, with at least 1 AP, you can also debuff the enemy with the highest damage, so a boss and so on, with Pasqal's unique Machine Spirit Banishment. This will also damage enemies that have the Part Machine trait, usually Tech Priests, and also the biomechanical enemies. Some pure machines like turrets are exempt from this. Now let us cover gear for our Pasqal Plasma Lord build, first with Chapter 1 choices. I admit, a lot of the best gear here, I just leave it for Argenta instead, as my main DPS. But for Pasqal, well, be sure to remove his Holy Vestment. The armors that grant more armor percentage amount and are medium are much better, such as Flak Armor. The Deck Officer Helmet for even higher armor, Sniper Gloves for more damage, the Camouflage Robe to reduce the enemy's dodge against his plasma attacks. You can just keep his normal Omniscient Axe until the second chapter, and for weapons, well, you'll have to make do with normal plasma pistols. And you can also use the Skirmisher Boots I have on Argenta. Because he has so many attacks under Finest Hour, line of sight is always going to be an issue, so whenever he deals damage, he has a chance of regaining movement, so that he can get more enemies in his line of sight. And for some second chapter options, the Fire Blast Carapace for more armor, Portable Cogitator for +10 to logic, the Shifting Combi Tool for +20 to tech use, Plasma Shaper Gloves for a huge bonus to tech use, and most importantly, Plasma Weapons. The Arc Strategist Mantle, after all we did go with Grand Strategist, for more bonuses to Pasqal's combat tactics areas. And for weapons, you can upgrade his normal axe to the Hand of Xenocide, or the Sea Delphine pattern Omniscient Axe, which you get from the Kiava Gamma boss. But most importantly for his plasma weapons, the best one overall is the Mezoa pattern Plasma Gun, but there's also the Heavy Plasma Gun, also from Kiava Gamma, I believe. Honestly, most are gained from the Explorators faction, so be sure to increase their reputation to the max if you want more gear for Pasqal during the second act. And well, this was it for my Pasqal Plasma Lord Buffer, Debuffer, and DPS build. As always, if you found this guide useful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and also consider becoming a channel member if you can. I truly appreciate your support. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.